Good morning, Angemine.
So, good morning, Jeff. So how are you? Good morning,
Yeah.
Tilly. Good morning, Ethan. So, we're going to start in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello. Is that Dilly or is that Faven?
It's Dilly.
Hey, it's great that you were able to connect.
Right? I had to cycle for 20 minutes to get to a point where my partner's phone has signal in order to then hotspot me from his phone.
So you're in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
You were in California.
I was in California. Yeah. I'm normally in California, but I drove here just to visit my partner.
That's fantastic. That's crazy, but it's
Yeah, so,
fantastic.
so I've actually
Eh,
been living in the Grand Canyon now for in total, I've been living here for about 3 months. Because
Whoa,
I
and
came,
are you working
sorry,
on bats there? Or is it just personal?
it's just personal. So my partner here is actually a wildlife biologist, and he's working on bats here,
Okay.
which is funny. So I'm visiting him, but I'm based in California doing my work.
Oh wow. Small world.
Right? Are you? Where are you? Are you at home?
Yeah, this is I'm at home, so um one of my students said it looks like you're still in the classroom.
It does look
But
like you're still in the classroom.
because it's all books and like
Yeah.
stuffed animals of frogs and birds and stuff. Well, and it's like it's the same, right? Whether I'm at school or whether I'm here, it's always the same. So,
That's so nice.
well, this is fantastic. And Faven, are you there? Is she
Hi
connected?
Jeff, how are you?
Hey, this is fantastic. So the internet's holding in Ethiopia.
Yeah, like there is good enough internet, although I can barely hear everyone, but it's okay.
Oh, this is you have no idea how excited I am to have the two of you connected, even though virtually, 2015 and 2020. This is cool.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before you got on. I think I can't believe it's been 5 years since I
Yeah.
graduated.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have uh your seeds, right? The guanacaste seeds that you gave me.
Yeah,
Um just as a reminder. It's
that's
nice.
so lovely.
Yeah, it was a great gift. Um so yeah, it's I can't believe how quickly time has gone by. And
Right.
and I don't know, it would be I would so much love it if you could come back to the classroom and actually see what it's like now, because for me, the cool thing is you were there at sort of like the beginning of the transition in room 15 towards a more student-centered, nature-based, right?
Yeah.
But Faven hit it head on. She had no choice. The
Very
transition was made.
cool. Very, very cool. And wait, when is this new campus opening? Or is
Good
it not going to be
question.
for a couple of years?
Yeah, it probably won't be for a couple of years because they have to build it. But the exciting thing here is that going back and looking at your Facebook stuff and our recent messages, you're going to be part. So I'm trying to build a small team of ex-student, former student researchers. And so, like I said, I'll be collecting ultrasonic recordings, and then I'll make them available that you can run them through
Yeah.
Kaleidoscope. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I'm trying to think who you would have overlapped with. Did you know Ana Hernandez?
No.
No, she was from 2013, but she's also now studying conservation, and she does some work with GIS and then Sirapum.
Yes. He was the
Okay,
year below me, I think.
okay,
So sorry. So I have shared the link. Tilly, you were asking for the link, so I have shared it on the group chat.
Perfect.
Okay. So shall we start? I'm so
yeah.
glad
Yes.
that you guys could like connect to each other. We connect with each other. Uh, it's really great. Yeah, and it's an honor to have you three here. So
No, thank you for your
shall we
patience,
start?
Edgemine. Yeah,
So shall we start?
Yeah.
let's go.
Okay. So we Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Muhammad Azmanatun Nakib. I happen to be the founder of Global Network for Environmental Affairs. So today on 13th of August, we have decided to organize our very first webinar, which is titled Conservation Through Education. So we have organized this webinar to share the stories of three individuals from three different continents and how the education and surroundings made them more aware about conservation, about environment, and it also influenced their life choices. So I'm going to introduce the speakers panel, the guests of today's webinar. First, we have Mr. Jeff Norris. So Jeff is a tropical ecologist and educator, and most of his professional life has been dedicated to classroom education, and which has been for over 20 years, and it's been in both U.S. and Costa Rican schools. So originally he's from Central Illinois, and Mr. Noyes has moved to Costa Rica now. And he and his wife have started Natural Solutions Costa Rica, which is an organization dedicated to reconnecting people with nature through research, ecotourism, and environmental education. So in August 2011, he joined United World Colleges Costa Rica as a faculty member. And then we have Dilly Hoyt. She is from Wales, and she is an ecologist and conservationist. She has joined us, and she has conducted research on bats in multiple international settings, and her experience to date has given her the determination to advance understanding of humanity's impact on tropical biodiversity and how it can be mitigated. So her research now focuses on the effects of wildfire on bats in California, if I'm not wrong, and how what type of threats the bat has due to the urbanization and climate change. Then last but not the least, we have the youngest panel of our today's guest list, Ms. Steven Edin Gitiashu. She is from Ethiopia and has studied in Costa Rica for the past 2 years. She was a member of Campus Naturalist, and it is a club that allows students to enjoy bird watching, to go for morning hikes, and get to know and admire the wildlife of Costa Rica. She also did an internship at More Hansen Research Institute, which is a tuberculosis research institute in Ethiopia. So I welcome all three of you to our very first webinar titled Conservation Through Education. It's an honor to have you.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a very informal question. So what did you do in the middle of the pandemic? Anything you have been planning for a long time, but you could not do due to the shortage of time, but now that, due to the lockdown, you had a lot of some time for yourself. Did you do anything interesting that we might, find interesting and we might want to know about?
Who should go first?
Let's start with Jeff, and then Dilly, and then Steven.
Okay. And one thing I would also like to add, Ajmine, is I don't know if it was part of the introduction, but it's a real pleasure for me to be here because both Dilly and Faven were students of mine, right, at United World College, and so it's a real fantastic joy to have them with us as part of this discussion. And so what did I do? Lots of reading, right? And so I was able to get to lots of things were going on in the world, and it gave me lots of time for reading and reflection, and also some writing and planning in terms of what's going to come next. In terms of conservation, what I was finally able to do is start looking at more in detail of bioacoustics. I've always been a big fan of recording nature, right? And a lot of times it was more done for making archival recordings or to help me identify certain species of birds, right, if I ever heard them. But now I'm moving more into the actual analysis of the bioacoustics, the soundscape, and how we can use some of these sound files in order to inform us about conservation and ecology. And eventually we'll be moving into more this new field of what is called passive acoustic monitoring, which is being able to monitor biodiversity, but using sound as opposed to other more traditional methods.
That's pretty interesting. That is pretty interesting, and like it's very, you know, it's like a blessing to be able to do what you want in the middle of the pandemic, because there are so many others who, you know, cannot afford or who cannot do the things we love because of, you know, the lockdown, because of so many struggles they're facing in the middle of the lockdown. So I'm so glad that you were able to do something you actually like doing.
Yeah, and just being very grateful for the opportunity, right? Because obviously I was able to stay at home and do these things, whereas other people obviously had it much more difficult.
Yes. And then, Dilly, what did you do in the middle of the pandemic?
Well, first of all, I travelled from a small island off of the UK called Jersey. It's a part of the Channel Islands. I had to fly off there with, I don't know, 6 hours notice before they shut down the airport. And I flew straight to the States and to the Grand Canyon, where I then lived here for 3 months. And I felt so lucky because although the park itself was closed for all of the visitors, we as residents, or me as kind of a fake resident, I guess, were able to hike all of the trails. And so they were saying how it was the first time in 70 years that all of these trails just weren't being used. And so, you know, speaking to the park rangers, they were saying how wildlife was coming back, you know, how all of these birds that they hadn't seen in some of these areas on the trails were there for the first time in many, many years because the foot traffic is so heavy. And so that was really incredible for me. I felt very, very lucky to be able to experience the beauty of the Grand Canyon, you know, on my own, I guess, without too many people. And as well, I think during this time, I really spent a lot of time painting. I think that's something that I've always enjoyed, that I've never really had the chance to do. And I do a lot of paintings of the wildlife that I see. So it also helps me with bat identification because, as we'll speak about later, some bats are very, very difficult to identify. They're what we call cryptic. Many species are cryptic. And so you might have very, very small defining features that will differentiate one species from another. And so being able to paint them and really focus on those details have kind of allowed me to memorize and identify species better. So yeah, I'm currently in the process of actually setting up a website to begin selling my art and selling my prints.
Oh, that's really great. That's really great. And now you're in a place you currently live in a place that is very remote, and you were there for some work, I believe, and still you joined us just because of the webinar. Really thankful to you for that. And then Steven, so what did you do in the middle of the pandemic? And something interesting that you want to share?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me. So during the pandemic, I would say we stayed at home for a very long time, right? So I have always wanted to learn a language that is kind of dying here in Ethiopia. They're less than, like, they're so small, people of like a bunch of nations that are speaking it. So I was trying to learn that language. It's called GNEA. I don't know if anyone knows. So that was what I've been doing basically.
That's really great. You made sure that you spend a very somewhat, or at least very productive like quarantine time. I'm really glad that you all spend a good time in the quarantine. So you know, now the lockdown is being being eased. So what are you guys working right now? Any interesting project we might want to know about? Any advancement in your work?
I guess like most people, my biology has been focused on my backyard, right? in times of quarantine, we're somewhat restricted and here in Costa Rica about how much we can get out and explore, even though now things are starting to open up a little bit. In terms of projects, is just sort of moving forward projects that we've already started, and sort of tightening them up and getting them prepared for the upcoming seasons. And this is basically two things. And so one is my work with the Children's Eternal Rainforest, and then also my work there at United World College, Costa Rica. And so what the work that's going on in both places is doing biodiversity surveys. And so initiating a citizen science program by which, through Natural Solutions and the Children's Eternal Rainforest, school groups and tourists can come down and make their observations within the Children's Eternal Rainforest. We're also doing that at school. And what's really exciting at our school right now is that our school is going to be moving. And so our school is currently located in a suburban area in a sort of like a drier ecosystem. And the school has recently purchased 48 hectares higher up in the mountains. And so over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be having one foot on one campus as we design the other one. And it's going to be really exciting to get students involved there in the biodiversity surveys of the current campus and how that shifts over to the new campus. And what's even more exciting, as I was talking with Dilly about this, is we're going to be doing some of this acoustic monitoring, and hopefully she'll accept to be part of this team that will take the ultra frequency of the ultrasound recordings that we make of bats, and she'll be able to help us identify what those species are. So it's basically what I've been doing and working on is preparing these programs to continue in the future.
That's really great. Yeah, Dilly, you want to add something?
Yeah, and following on from Jeff, he was talking about how technology is now moving from, physically catching these animals, which, not only takes a lot of manpower and hours to do so, and it's a lot of work too. And so what's fantastic about these passive recorders is that you can set them out and they can record for weeks and weeks at a time, and then you can collect them in the end, and then you can analyze the data, and you have so much data there. And, that only requires a couple of hours of work for hundreds of hours of recording, which is fantastic. And so following that, my thesis for my master's, as you'd mentioned in the introduction, is doing just that. So I'm deploying all of these acoustic devices across this landscape that has been historically affected by wildfire over, many, many years. We have records of it going back, into the early 1900s. And I'm looking at how fire may affect bats. And so, I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to do and continue my fieldwork throughout the pandemic. So I'm week 7 of 9 of data collection now. So I'm nearly at the end. And it's been great for me because as the world has kind of slowed down, I've been able to continue doing my work. And I've been given the extra time to be able to really dive into my acoustic analysis. So looking at all of these calls that have been collected, and they'll appear on this sonogram, and each call will have a different frequency, a different shape, and from that we're able to discern in the States, at least, because we have what we call a very good acoustic library. So there have been many, many recordings and much analysis and processing of these calls. So we're pretty familiar with what bat species are there. And so I've been able to work on that. Whereas it's very challenging in countries like Costa Rica and where I was working in Malawi, where I was trying to develop an acoustic library there, which is, essentially saying, oh, this call is this bat species. And it's very tough when, there is no data. These countries are often data deficient, and this technology, as Jeff mentioned, is fairly new. And so, of course, I would love to be a part of the project that Jeff has just mentioned in Costa Rica. But it will, present many challenges in itself due to the lack of data that there is on and the sheer number of species. We have maybe 27, 30 species of bat in the States, you know, I'm guessing you probably have about 100, 110 or
110.
so.
Yep, 110.
Exactly, 110 in Costa Rica. So, you know, that offers a whole new challenge in itself.
I'm really glad that you two could reconnect as both teacher and student, and how Dilly got inspired through just teachings in the class. It's very inspiring, and it can, it can teach the other teachers and students can be to be more, collaborative and to learn from each other. It's really inspiring. Then Steven, like any new like project or anything new you're working on, or anything new you're learning? Steven, can you hear us? You're on mute. Okay, so probably there's some internet, like there's some problem regarding internet connection. Let me
Yeah,
just check.
she did just say that she was having difficulty.
Yes, yeah, she
connecting.
told me before. Okay, so I'm hoping she will join us shortly. So so Jeff, you told us about Children of Rainforest. So does Children of Rainforest and Natural Solutions work collaboratively with United World Colleges Costa Rica? Like, are these organizations working? Oh, that's really great.
Essentially, it's basically through me, right? Because as Natural Solutions, I'm basically the co-owner with my wife, but you know, I do all the logistics and organize the trips, and then when the trips do come, most of those trips I'm the actual guide. And then it was this program that we developed is called Biodiversity and Peace, and this program was developed with an organization in the United States called Friends of the Rainforest, and they're sort of like a sister organization for the Children's Eternal Rainforest here in Costa Rica. And then it was a collaboration with the North American Montessori Teacher Association and the Montessori Institute for the Science of Peace, because this program was sort of designed with Montessori education and the philosophy in mind. And also here in Costa Rica, I lean heavily upon the University for Peace for components of the experience that deal directly with peace. And then the biodiversity part is spending anywhere between 4 to 7, 8, 9 days with me in the rainforest. And we do a lot of this stuff. You know, we put up camera traps. We put out some recorders. We have students making observations, and we're developing also a real-time geo-referenced app that students can have on their phone. So whenever they're hiking around the trails, they can say, hey, I'm on this trail at this time, and I'm seeing this monkey. They take a picture of it, and then it goes into a greater database. And then with United World College Costa Rica, we have what's called a project week every year. And over the past 4 years now, I've taken a project week group of students from United World College to go to the Children's Eternal Rainforest and get them to do the biodiversity and peace. And even more excitingly is as my students get trained in the use of the equipment, the familiarity with the station and the trails, Natural Solutions will then invite them back to interact with the student groups that come in from Mexico or Chile, the United States, and be field assistants. And so it is even a greater international collaboration of students doing some of this biodiversity monitoring. And so so it's been really sort of a symbiotic relationship in which I've been able to incorporate 2 jobs, right, and sort of bring them together. And this is at the Children's Eternal Rainforest. And unfortunately, Dilly wasn't around for when we started doing this, but Faven's been able to go. I think she was able to be a part of 3 or 4 different trips. So that's the joining that we've been able to do.
That's really great, because it shows there can be better understanding about conservation and environmentalism if different organizations and education institutions work together. It can be more fruitful. This can be a learning thing for other organizations and education institutions as well. So Fevenam, as you probably lost connection before, I want to get back to you regarding if you are doing anything, any new project or anything new you're learning in the middle of the pandemic or like post-pandemic. Um, you have recently joined your university, right? Like anything new you want to share with us?
Okay. I'm sorry. So the internet is so bad here.
Yeah.
I'm trying if I heard you right. So are you asking me if I'm doing any projects? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, and as you have already started university, like probably
Okay.
like recently, so is there anything interesting you want to share with us regarding that as well?
Okay. So I would say I don't have any current active projects right now, but one thing that I've been trying to do since I'm here in Ethiopia is to see if we can make a habit of having a sustainable shopping bags. So here in Ethiopia, we use plastic bags, and it's very common to use plastic bags, and people don't often use it, like reuse it. They just use it once and throw it away. So I'm trying to raise awareness about that, and I'm trying to plan a project where I can like lead students and have them trained in being able to make reusable or recyclable shopping bags, basically made from recycled goods. So I used to recycle coffee plastic bags when I was at UWC Costa Rica. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I used to make only wristbands, but now I'm trying to see if I can make a proper shopping bag.
That's really great. It's very inspiring to see someone as young as you are to make a difference in the society. It's very inspiring. So we have a few questions from the comment section of Facebook. So Tamit Chaudhary, he asked, "Hello everyone. Hope you are all doing well. I would love to know how you got inspired to work in the field of conservation. What were the challenges in your initial steps?" So as Dilly and Jeff are currently working on conservation projects, or their work is regarding conservation, so I'm guessing the question was directed towards mainly Dilly and Jeff. So Dilly, you go first, and then Jeff.
Sure. So I have always been a big fan, very passionate about nature. I think it's something that's very healing to me. Sorry about the beeping in the background. It's a reversing lorry, I think. And, since a young kid, I would go on long walks with my parents in nature. And additionally, watching documentaries like David Attenborough documentaries about the Amazon rainforest, I was just absolutely enamored and, encapsulated by the prospect of how rich the biodiversity is in these tropical areas. And so coming to Costa Rica was really a dream for me in that aspect. I think I really fell in love with tropical ecology then, and Jeff was a really big part of that for me. And now I think the challenges of getting into it is often that many people require you to have a lot of experience, as in many fields. And a lot of this experience, you have to pay for in many, or that's kind of the easy way to do it, in the sense that you will pay for an experience that lasts 2 weeks or a month in a tropical place with this, international institution. And you will gain, valuable skills. But at the same time, that's fairly classist, in the sense that not everyone can afford these opportunities. And so I think that's definitely something that makes conservation more difficult to access. But really what you have to understand is that you don't need to go on these experiences. Find a local group, find a local bat group, find a local birding group. There will be someone near you that do these things that these organizations will offer abroad, and you can from there you can expand your network. For me, I think my advice to any aspiring conservationist would be to reach out to those people that you are inspired by. I think there have been many times where I've been umming and ahhing, do I send this email and tell this person if I'm that I'm a big fan of their work, or that I'd love to work with them in the future, or that I really like their paper, send that email, make that connection, because, more often than not, that person is going to be really flattered that you reached out to them. And from there, you can get these opportunities to go and do fieldwork abroad that might be covered by a grant. You don't have to pay out of your own pocket. And I think that's where the majority of my experience has come from ecology, is reaching out to these people and making use of the contacts that are around me from my institution, from the university I went to. It's led me all across the world. And, that hasn't been something that I have personally had to put a lot of money towards, and so that's probably something that I would say, is that, it's not something that has to be very expensive. And more often than not, the issues that you want to solve that are abroad, like our impact on the environment, we see how in the tropics it has, incredibly rich biodiversity, and also a lot of habitat degradation and deforestation and urbanization going on. And so our initial thoughts are, I want to go to this place to do this research. When really, if you actually think, oh, hang on a minute, the very same problems that I am hoping to solve elsewhere are actually happening in my very own backyard. I recently saw that there was, what we call a red list was published on the UK and on Wales in particular, saying that 1 in 3 mammal species are threatened to extinction. And that's happening in my own country. And so there is so much work that can be done in your own country, that you don't need to go abroad. It's, everything is right in front of you.
So, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm really going to echo a few things that Dilly already mentioned, but in terms of becoming a conservationist, it's not like you can take courses on conservation and things like that, but I think becoming a conservationist is probably more a mindset and a personal growth and development than it is having completed a certain course per se. I think I would always like to say that to all my students, that we are all conservationists, and we're just at different stages of development, right? And so you can see that, I can see definitely that the Dilly now is much more conservationist than she was when she left my classroom in 2015. But having said that, I think she and I had similar paths growing up, in the fact that I just loved animals. I thought animals were cool, right? And we had a program back then called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and that sort of opened my eyes to all the different animals and the species that could be found in different places. And I think having that opportunity to go beyond your backyard, visit a habitat which is something which is different for you. And so it's like, I too was bit by the tropical bug on an early course experience, and what that does for you is that gives you a new set of eyes, a new way of looking at things. And so by the time you return home, by the time you go to your own backyard, you now have a new perspective of how to see things. And so, just look at Dilly's transformation of fact, she's gone halfway around the world a couple of times, and then found out, what, there are species of mammals here in my own backyard. And so that is a sort of awakening, and as part of the growth and development. And so if you are interested in conservation, you don't have to go on one of these big trips, but I would encourage you to at least explore different habitats in different regions nearby if you could, because again, that gives you that sort of that newness, that new look. And so you can say, oh, those bird calls are different here than what I'm used to back home, or look at these plants, or look at the seasonality. And just take Faven as another example. She is at a newer stage in her development, but she is very much a conservationist in the mindset that I have. And so I think being a conservationist, just, it's a title you can call yourself, but it's a process, it's a development. And, I will be better at it in the future as I grow. So
there are a few comments I'm going to show. So Yoni said, hello everyone, 2017 is present. It's probably for Dilly. Then Ifat said, loving the stories. And then we have a question for Dilly. So a question to Dilly Hoyt. Us being young conservation enthusiasts, what suggestion and tips would you share with youngsters to proceed with their dreams?
I mean, echoing what I've already said is to gain as much experience as you can, and in all different realms. So, and not to kind of focus on one thing. So, if you, let's say you like, I don't know, let's say you like birds. It's equally important to study birds, but it's just as important to also learn how to do camera trapping and how to, I don't know, look for herbs for snakes and lizards, and to, I don't know, do some bat research. I don't know, I'm very biased towards bats, as I said, but all of these experiences then will allow you all of these opportunities in the future. A big part of my work being a bat researcher, I've had to collaborate with many other people who are specialists in their fields in different things, whether that be botany or whatever else. And so it's really cool going there as a bat researcher, but also giving a hand to other conservationists who are experts in other fields. And so as a result, I've been able to, add tools to my toolkit of saying, oh, actually, now I know how to do camera traps, or now I know how to do vegetation surveys and everything else. And so, one thing I'd say is broaden your horizons, expand all of the, get as many skills as you can in this area, because that will really make you a better candidate for when you're applying for jobs and things. And again, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier about reaching out to those people that inspire you. Don't be afraid of sending that person that you love so much an email or a message or anything else, because that has really been key in my development as a young ecologist. Because a lot of the time you will find people that want to mentor you and that are supportive and will send you, I don't know, a job opportunity, or will send you links to a webinar that might interest you. And all of these are kind of steps on becoming the person that you want to become, or going on the ladder of what you perceive to be success. And so that's really what I'd say. And as well, connect with the local community around you. I think it's I think citizen science is something that Jeff mentioned earlier, is becoming more and more prevalent, and it's really, really important. And so being a part of local groups will not only connect you with local contacts, which might provide you with future opportunities, but will also provide data on the biodiversity around you, which will inform policymakers in your area of what areas to protect, or or whatever else. And so think global but act local, I guess.
That's a very good tagline. Like, act local. Okay, so Steven, there's a question for you in the comment section. What inspired you in such a young age that you were encouraged enough to take actions against the global plastic problem and incorporated that in your own way? I mean, really, it's amazing to see such young change makers.
Okay, thank you so much. So the first time that I heard about plastics was when I mean, here in Ethiopia, we use it so often that it's not a very big problem, right? So I went to UWC, and there's MUN, and it's crucial to take part in MUN. And one of my first choices was to be taking part in one of the MUN programs that talks about plastic, especially microplastic. And so, because I was part of the MUN and I was a delegate of the United States, I was trying to see, to have more research. And that's when I realized that plastics are doing so much, they're just not sustainable, and they're not, I don't think plastics are something that we need. Of course, there
I'm guessing she has some internet issues. Yeah. So we will continue with her. Oh yeah, she joined again. Feven, can you hear us?
Yes, and I'm very sorry again. Is it mute?
Understandable.
Okay, so I was just saying that that was when I first got inspired, and I had a host family when I was at EWC Costa Rica. She was the one who taught me how to be able to put together plastic bags and change them to. I'm sorry I don't have one of them with me right now, but I'll definitely send a picture, maybe to the group so that you could see it. That's how I got inspired. Thank you.
That's really inspiring. So, in which committee were you in? The committee you were talking about that worked with plastic pollution.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, so you took part in that model event, right? Which committee was
Yes.
it?
So I was part of the United Nations Environmental Program. So the MUN was modeled around UNEP, and I was basically a delegate, and it was my first time doing MUN. So that was how I got inspired, because the issue that we were tackling was microplastics and how we would be able to have a policy that's sustainable enough that countries agree with.
That's really inspiring because like MUN is such an important and such an amazing platform, and any extracurricular activity that we can use to learn more about world issues regarding so many important issues. And then with that learning, as you are doing now, we can incorporate it in our real lives. That is really
Exactly.
inspiring. Now I'm going to ask like something about your time in UWC Costa Rica. So, how did the classroom of UWC influence your aim in life or your passion or what you're doing right now? How did it influence your aim in life?
Okay. Should I?
Yeah, like let's start with Steven, then Dilly, and then Jeff.
Okay. Thank you again. So room 15 that's my bio room. So that was Jeff's room. Room 15 has been such a life changer for me, and I think for most of my classmates. I can speak for my classmates. The first thing that I noticed when I went to room 15 was the liberty and the independence. So Jeff has always made us think that we are capable of doing what we're supposed to do. He would support us all the way, and we would ask questions whenever we have. But he also allowed us to take the initiative to be independent. So we would have independent study times. And it was very crucial because it gives you the liberty, but at the same time, you're responsible. So you would become, how do I say it? You would become a responsible responsible young adult that's doing kind of like portraying their own curriculum. So you would study biology, but you can study whichever part. Of course, Jeff would have suggestions, right? And I don't know how to describe it. It's so much more. We would have time to talk about our experiences, to share our experiences. It was more than just studying the IB, because the IB is very demanding. But at the same time, it was just theory, right?
Probably she got disconnected again.
Well, I can follow that if you'd like.
Yes, sure.
I can completely agree with everything that Fabian has said so far. I really like the independent learning aspect of it. But what struck me more than anything was that Jeff's classroom was really a place for you to follow what it was that you were interested in. So I loved, it was the first time really that I had looked above me and looked at the trees and seen the birds and taken a textbook from the bird IDing book from Jeff's classroom, and Jeff lent me a pair of his binoculars, to take home with me, and I was able to go out whenever I wanted to and look at the birds. And I would write lists of bird species that I'd found on campus, and that was something that was really incredible, that I was able to look outside of the textbook, outside of the IB content, and really apply what I'd learned in class outside into the real life. And I think that experience for me was more valuable than anything else, was able to step outside and look at the world around me. And that's really where my love of tropical ecology came from, was Jeff allowing me to not only to sit at my desk and study my book, but to look outside. And a big part of a part of the IB is the extended essay, and I chose to do my essay in biology. And I remember troubleshooting with Jeff about, what project should I do? Should I look at hummingbirds and the way they pollinate the plants outside, or, anything else? And what I actually focused on in the end was ant lions. I don't know if Jeff remembers this.
I do.
But, I was measuring the diameter of these antlion holes and the depth of them, and seeing if I was kind of applying a little bit of maths to my project too, and seeing if these antlions had programmed in them, if they were, fantastic mathematicians, that they were able to maximize the volume of their little cone that they made. So basically, just for everyone to know, antlions create these kind of cones in the floor, these inverted cones, and they'll sit at the bottom when they're, in the larval form. And they'll wait for little ants to come, or any insects, to creep over the sand where they live. And, the little sand particles, if they come close enough to their little trap, that conical trap, the little sand particles will actually sink down to the bottom of this cone and will awake the antlion. And the antlion will then use its legs to flick up sand, and which will knock the ant at the top of the cone down into the cone, where the antlion is then able to eat the insect. And I was absolutely fascinated by these tiny little mathematicians. And so I wanted to see if they maximize the area of their cone, by looking at the diameter and the depth of the cone. And, it turned out that they did, and that, that they were. I was really interested in at the time of the fractals and mathematics in nature, and so that was a really cool project to me, kind of focusing on such a small, tiny thing that so many people overlook, and really being able to hone in and see a whole different world in a tiny little microcosm right outside of the classroom. And so it really struck me that, nature and biology is everywhere. And, again, it's, that was right outside the classroom, and the dirt by the door, and I thought that was fantastic. And so, again, it was just being able to extend my learning from the books inside the classroom and apply it to the outside. And, from then on, I've been doing the same ever since. If ever I'm stressed, if ever work is too much, I step out into nature and I'm whole again. I'm able to look at the birds around me and, look at the flowers and sit and think. And it brings me right back to the days of, again, classroom number 15, of being able to do just that.
Yeah, thank you, Dilly. And Steven, you probably there was some problem regarding your internet. Would you like to add something with what Dilly just said?
I don't know, I don't have anything to add. I think she said it all. I would just say that what I learned from room 15 was that I can be independent, responsible, and be able to go along my path with confidence. I chose what to do during my independent time, and I chose to use my time properly. And to be able for Jeff to give us that trust and that confidence, it was also something that we learned, that to believe in ourselves. So I would say that throughout my passion from now on, I would carry on with that, to be able to be confident and independent. Thank you.
Thank you, Fifen. And it's so amazing to see that UWC has, helped to shape you in such a mature person in such a young age. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Jeff, so how did the classroom shape you as a teacher? How did the other students inspire you to keep following your dream to be an ecologist and a conservationist. How did the students and the classroom help you with that?
Well, it's incredibly humbling to hear these wonderful stories, and that's why a lot of teachers do what we do, right? Is and I would also like to think it's a reciprocal process, that hearing these stories motivates me to go and replicate that, right? And so, giving Dilly the freedom to just go outside and look down in the dirt outside the door and find this beautiful relationship in nature. And it's a predation event, right? You don't have to go to the savannas of Africa to watch lions taking down wildebeest. There's ant lions right outside the door. And watching Dilly go through that process, it helps me, it reaffirms, right, that this using nature as the tool. And as a matter of fact, that's my quote. Students know I use it all the time. Let nature be your teacher. It's a poem that was written by William Wordsworth in 1798. And there's so much more you can learn just by being in nature than waiting for me to tell you or to read it from a book. And so that's become a large component of our actual classroom, is spending time in nature. And so I get my motivation from my students, and it's this reciprocity, I think, that makes Room 15, or Dilly, we now call it Habitat 15, right? Because a habitat is where things live and grow, and it's where we all grow and develop, as people, as individuals, as students. And it's really great to work at a UWC, because UWC does this marvelous job of attracting a lot of students with these ideals and values, and they're just ready and eager to run with whatever it is you give them. And so I find that the role of who's the teacher and who's the student is often inverted. And so just by giving Dilly and Faven the freedom to explore their own interests and their passions, or what Sir Ken Robinson refers to as the element, right, where your passion and skills overlap, they end up teaching me, right? And so I learned things about ant lions that I never knew. And, Faven taught me things about tuberculosis and Ethiopia that I never knew. And so, so when I go to plan a lesson, I can't plan these things, right? I can plan the opportunities. I give them the experience, and that's what it's all about, is giving them the experience and the opportunities to engage in their own learning, to be in control of their own growth and development. And we all benefit from it. So so I learn from them, I think, as much as what they get from me. It's fantastic.
So they inspired you to continue your to be an educator, to be an ecologist, to be a conservationist. But what inspired you to follow this path in the first place? I think even Dilly and Steven and the audiences would like to know about that.
So yeah, I probably wouldn't call myself a conservationist until, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's a path of development, right? I started off just like loving animals. I thought all animals were cool, and then over a while, through your experiences, you learn that, well, all life is cool, right? The plants and the interactions between the animals and the plants, and how they form ecosystems. Those are just the story just becomes more fascinating, right? And then eventually you get to this the storyline. Well, all of these great things in nature are impacted by the attitudes and actions of humans. And I think that's where you start to have this shift from just being a bio nerd or a nature lover or whatever, and then you move from this concept of awareness into action, right? And so you take what it is you've learned, and then you try and do something with it. And throughout my own formation, my own development, my own educators, my own teachers had a lot to do with it. Outside of my parents and the opportunities they were able to provide for me, I was very fortunate and always grateful to have, at each stage of my own academic development, teachers who were passionate about nature and passionate about conservation, and giving me the time, and giving me their information and sharing the experiences with me, that I think that when I decided to become a teacher, really what I wanted to do is kind of pay them back, or or pay it forward, right? As the concept of taking the tools and the gifts that I was given, and then maybe pass it on to the next generation. And so I think that's where I got a lot of my initial motivation from, was my parents supporting me, teachers supporting me, giving me the opportunities. And then now I'm in this feedback, this positive feedback loop, where it is my students, right? My students keep me going.
Yeah, that is really inspiring. I mean, how even Dilly, Steven, and Jeff, you all praise each other about how like Jeff pushed Dilly and Steven to follow their dreams, and how Dilly and Steven, being students, inspired Jeff to follow his passion of being an educator and an ecologist. So it's really inspiring to see how good coordination there is between students and a teacher. So I have a question for Jeff. As you have mentioned about not natural solutions, I want to know what inspired you to start Natural Solutions, and would you let us know about how it operates? And also, you have mentioned they're like the students are taken to several trips in several places. So, do you think, how important do you think it's important for like the young students to go to places to learn more about environment and to learn more about conservation, so that they can also be inspired to follow their path in such area?
Okay, it's kind of a big question, and I'll see if I can try and give it a concise answer. But in terms of providing young people with these experiences and these opportunities, we've talked about it earlier, and I think what Natural Solutions does is create these opportunities and experiences for students to come visit the rainforest. And for many of them, it's a new experience, it's a new habitat, and we help them, we retrain them, right, to see nature with these new eyes. And the great thing about the rainforest is, like, what Dilly was saying is, like with the bats. And so, like, when we go into the rainforest, I have friends and other scientists that I invite along with me. And so I will maybe take groups of students out in the morning, and we count birds, and we record bird calls, and we do surveys. We'll also have other specialists come in, and a good friend of mine, he's a master zoologist or a chiroptologist, a bat expert, and he'll put up the mist nets, and we catch the bats. And the number of species we get is a lot greater, and so it's just an overwhelming experience. And so I think the experience of going to a new place, getting those new eyes, is important. And why do it with kids? Well, if we deal with families, we'll deal with university groups, we deal with adults. But why do I really enjoy the student group so much is because students teach parents. And there are many stories by which you can find. I know here in Costa Rica, there was an environmental education program that in a particular area of the country, they were teaching the kids about a local species of macaw, one of those giant parrots, and they were in danger of becoming extinct. And part of the reason was, habitat destruction. And unfortunately, people will take the babies from the nest and then, use them as part of the wildlife trade. But by educating the students the importance of these macaws, the students were then able to go home and share this information with their parents and with the community. And eventually the poaching and the stealing of eggs and baby chicks, it decreased dramatically. And Faven also mentioned, just this idea of recycling plastic or using less plastic. One thing here, I got one here. One thing we do at school is we've been making eco bricks, right, recently, where you take all the plastic that you can't recycle, shoving it into a 2-liter bottle, and then now that plastic will stay out of landfills, will not get into the ocean, and then you can use these things to construct, in some cases they've constructed entire schools and buildings and rooms out of these. So it's with the plastics, I've recently had a couple of students tell me in their countries that they were the ones able to introduce recycling and things like that to their parents. And so I think this is why it's very important to focus on these experiences as part of education for young children, because as young children, they teach their parents, and more importantly, get them started young doing these more eco-friendly lifestyles, right? So learning how to live a lifestyle which is a little bit more sustainable, right? And so that's why I think it's nice to be able to focus on children. And then the final thing I'll say is that, and Dilly knows this because she's also studying urban development, but with urban development, the experiences that young people have in nature are greatly reduced, right? And so if what we've been talking about is how our experiences in nature shaped our own views as conservationists, by having entire generations of children having that nature experience reduced or not even having it, that is going to be a big problem for conservation in the future. And another phenomenon which we get from the fishing industry is what's known as the shifting baseline syndrome. So each generation, when we are born, we see the world that we're born into as this is normal, this is good. But what we don't know is that baseline has shifted from when our grandparents were alive, right? And so I see the world as good and green and happy now, but it was much greener, right? There were more species, less habitat destruction when my grandparents were alive. And so, all these reasons come together, and I think this is why it's important to focus on young people. And, any age, right, you can start along this development of conservation, but I think this is why we want to focus on the young people.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your very inspiring insight. And it's really inspiring to see how, in all of your statements, you keep on relating, like trying to relate to the other students you had in your classes, and also Dilly, and how even how you also can relate to them. It's really inspiring how there's always some good coordination between, the teacher and the student. So I have a question for Feven. Feven, are you with us? Yes. So Feven, as you are yet to pursue a career, and you have mentioned that you want to work in the health sector, you want to be a healthcare provider, and also a laboratory technician. So how did United World Colleges or Jeff's class play a role to inspire you to be a healthcare provider or a laboratory technician? As you have mentioned before that you were intrigued by human physiology. Does your being intrigued by human physiology has anything to do with, being part of campus naturalist, as I have mentioned you were a part of? Oh, did she? Feven, could you hear us?
Yes. So I'm sorry. I think you were asking me about my interest in healthcare and how
yes, how it
UWC
related to UWC, and also your time with Campus Naturalist, as you have mentioned. It was a club you joined in UWC.
Okay, wait, let me see if I get this right. So you were asking me if what UWC Costa Rica and Room 15 played a role in my interest in health sector. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and also Campus Naturalist.
Oh, okay, all right. I apologize again for the internet.
It's totally fine. It's totally understandable.
All right. So I would say I was interested in health sector even before I joined UWC Costa Rica. But then I did my extended essay. It's part of the IB curriculum. So I did my extended essay in biology, and I specifically did it on multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis strains. So basically, I was looking at drug-resistant TB and its abundance in Ethiopia, and the different kind of technique that we use to be able to isolate those kind of TB from the normal TB, which are drug-sensitive. So I think that is how I became very, very interested. And one of the things that Jeff always told me was to be able to carry on my passion and look at what I like the most rather than looking at something that I can do easily. So he was my supervisor for my EE. So when I first approached him, he was like, okay, so try to see what you really like. And that happened to be what I liked. And it turned out well. So that's how Room 15 has affected my, has kind of influenced me to be interested in being a laboratory technician, and rather than being a doctor. So I was very intrigued by how the labs operate. And I was like, okay, I really do love working in the laboratory rather than being a physician or a surgeon. And when it comes to campus naturalist, I found the passion that I have to be in nature or to explore nature in general when I was at UWC. I joined this club. It's extracurricular activity. And Jeff was our supervisor, but from the faculty member, right? Mm-hmm. So I was, when I was here in Ethiopia, that was the first club that I joined, even before going to UWC Costa Rica, right? Because I joined late. And when I went there, I really enjoyed working, trying to get to know Costa Rica biodiversity, which led me to think that I was in Ethiopia, but I didn't know as much about my country, right? That's another project that I'm trying to design to be able to understand the Ethiopian biodiversity well, and also to be able to catch up on what I haven't been able to catch up when I was in Costa Rica. And when I was in Costa Rica, I joined this club, Campus Naturalist, and then I became the leader. So that's when we went to trips. I had another, there were 2 leaders, so I was one of the leaders. So we had trips, we would have morning hikes, we would have bird watching. That is where I found the passion that I have for bird watching, which I hope to continue when I go to college as well.
That's really inspiring. I mean, how it inspired you to be someone so passionate about something in such a young age. It's very inspiring to see how an institution can shape the mind of such a young person. It's really inspiring. So now I have a question for Dilly and Steven. Dilly, you are a female conservationist, and Steven, you want to be a healthcare provider. So my question to both of you is there any barrier you both have faced as female conservationists or aspiring healthcare provider or a laboratory technician in the society? And if yes, then how did you overcome those barriers? Because I believe other female viewers of this webinar would also like to know.
Sure, I can definitely
let's start
first.
with yeah.
And I also want to say that this will be my last question. I'm sorry, I'm having to head off pretty soon.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Okay, great. I can say that due to my privilege of coming from a very, wealthy and stable country, of Wales and the UK generally, also being white and also having a family that is supportive and able to support me, both emotionally and financially too, that I have not come across that many barriers. And that's not to say that those barriers don't exist. I've been very fortunate that I have been able to chase any opportunity that I have gone for. And that's due to my privilege of being a white woman in a Western country. And, it's going to be an incredibly different experience being a person of color from a Western country, being a person of color from a country that isn't as financially developed or stable or economically stable, I should say. And so my experiences to date have, although the fact that science is still a very male dominated field, ecology personally and conservation, there are more women now and is increasing as the years go by. And I would say from personal experience, it's probably about 50-50 now. But in many other fields within science, like physics, maths, for example, it is still male dominated. And so what I would say, again, to reiterate, to those women, is to look at those judgments that you initially have of yourself, of saying, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or why are you having these thoughts to begin with? Is it because you really aren't good enough, or that you don't feel like you can, that you can chase these experiences? Or is it because you have been programmed by these internal structures that are around us, these patriarchal systems that say that, we can't do it? And so, I would really challenge those thoughts and think, I can do it. And, by reaching out to peers around you, by reaching out to those people that inspire you. I work with a lot of academics who are women because they really aspire me. And I work in the field with a lot of women. And again, I put myself in these situations where I am uplifted and I'm able to uplift others so that they don't come across the same barriers that, for example, their parents might have, and to really go for those opportunities that you might think, oh, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I can't. Because of this, that, or the other, you can, and so to surround yourself by people who believe in you as well, and women can do anything that men can do, in whatever field, and conservation, is a part of that. And
Thank
on that
you,
note,
Dilly. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to leave.
Okay. Dilly. There's this one particular question that someone personally told me, so that everyone answers this. Like one last question.
Sure.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Really sorry for that. So there's this one question that was asked. So oftentimes in South Asian countries in particular, the amount of facilities or guidance available is lacking on a certain niche. So what would often be a hurdle for students to conduct research on an interesting topic? What would be your advice to young environmentalists on conducting research and writing scientific paper in that scenario? Can students conduct research independently through literature review and independently communicating with scholars outside of their country?
Absolutely. So collaboration is so necessary in science. And you'll see that, in every paper, every journal that you read. If you look at all of the authors that are part of the paper, they're from institutions all around the world. And so, if you can't find somebody that's local, that's doing what you like, often a very quick search on a journal search engine will tell you, oh, actually, somebody might have done work in this area, mm-hmm. or that somebody is interested in doing work in this area. And so again, what I'd suggest is you reach out to that person, and you could be a part of that. And alternatively, if there isn't, literature reviews are very powerful things, and that's something that you are able to do from your own desk at home. Mm-hmm. And so I would really advise you to do that, if not anything else. But again, collaboration on a global scale is so important. And especially what I would say is something that I really want to focus on as I advance my career in conservation is being very conscious of, when I go to do research abroad, of collaborating with locals who are already there, because I think we still have this colonial perspective of going to these tropical countries, getting the data that we need and bringing them back to these Western institutions. And that's very colonialist in itself. And so what's incredibly important is when we're going to these areas to actually work with the locals, to empower them, to teach them these skills. So this conservation is able to continue long past when you've left and written your paper and published it. The only way that we're able to continue this conservation in these tropical areas is if we teach the locals on how to do so. And so I would say definitely, you are able to do this. And, if you can't find a local group, then, by all means, there will be somebody, a professor from somewhere else that you should definitely email and say, hey, I can see from your previous papers that you have been interested in this, or that you've done research on this. And I would love to be a part of this. And so, yeah, I think that's Jeff might be able to add to that.
Yeah. Okay. So before Jeff adds, Dilly, you have to leave now, right?
I do, yeah. But it's been a real pleasure being a part of this, and I really, really thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful to hear you, Dilly.
Yeah.
Likewise, Jeff.
It was an honor to have you here, and thank you for inspiring the young minds who are watching this webinar. Thank you so much for being with us. And you are in a very remote area right now for your research purpose, and I know how difficult it was yesterday. Till yesterday, you did not have internet connection, but somehow this for the viewers to know. You took a detour, and then you had to go to the city to get internet. Thank you so much for the effort. It means a lot.
No worries. And if anybody has any additional questions, I'm perfectly happy to answer them. If you send me a Facebook message, I'm Dilly Hoyt. And Twitter as well, I'm Dilly Hoyt too.
Yeah. Thank you. We will definitely let the viewers know. Thank you, Dilly. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Okay. So before Jeff and Feven. Okay. So yes, Jeff. So would you like to add something to what Dilly just said, and also Feven?
Yeah. So information is readily available now. It's at the click of a keyboard, right? Just finding anything online, and like Dilly said, find those people. There's organizations to collaborate with. And I would also say you've got to, with everything, you've got to put in your time. And you mentioned a literature review. A literature review is based on just reading, right? And so read. If, find something you're passionate about, find something you're interested in, and just read. And then the more you read, you're going to be building up this body of knowledge. And then once you get to a body of knowledge, you're going to find that you start having questions. And it's from those questions that entire research programs can develop. And I would go back to something we talked about earlier, is also start small, is look in your backyard. Because just by spending time in nature, even in your backyard or local park, the more time you spend there, you're going to become familiar with it, and you yourself are going to be starting asking questions. I plant a lot of plants in my garden, and it's not a garden like food. It's more of a garden as to like wildlife. I plant all kinds of plants to attract butterflies and hummingbirds, and there's maybe 5 different species of butterflies that go through the entire life cycle somewhere in my garden. The plants they eat. I've noticed the other day that there's lots of different spiders in my garden, and I don't know what the species are, what they do. And so there's plenty of unanswered questions, plenty of ways to get engaged, probably just right outside your door. And Dilly's extended essay was a fantastic example of that. After thinking about these broad ideas, she realized that a tiny predatory insect in the ground outside the classroom door was a perfect research avenue. So yeah, read a lot, write a lot, and just start asking questions.
Feven?
Okay, so I would agree with Jeff and with everything that they said. I think for anything, like whether it is conservation or environmentalism or any science or even social sciences, would have the same start, which is basically like trying to find what you really like. And to find that, you have to read a lot, and you have to be able to have a knowledge, kind of a little bit of everything, so that you can see, oh, I like this one better. But it's also very important to be able to say that, okay, so if I have read this much, then what can I ask myself? So you would read something, but then be like, okay, I read and understand this much, but what am I not understanding? So that you can try to see which part is open for you research.
Yeah.
Thank you, Feven. So, with that, I'm also gonna get back to you with another question, which you were supposed to answer after early, regarding any barrier you had faced as a female, as an aspiring female healthcare provider or a laboratory technician in the society, from the society you come from or the society you lived in Costa Rica. Any kind of barrier you faced?
Okay. Honestly speaking, I think in Ethiopia, we are having like this change of giving resources to anyone who want them. So basically, whether you're a girl or a boy, it doesn't affect it doesn't kind of affect like the resources that you get. So if you want to do research, then they will allow you to do research. I would say I was lucky because the research institute that I worked in, I have been able to visit it when I was still in Ethiopia, I think like 2 times through my school. So I was studying in a school in Ethiopia. It's called Cruise School, and we would have these visits to this research institute, and that's how I knew this research institute. So when I was like asking them for opportunity of internship, I also kind of mentioned that, and they were very like glad to see that their efforts were not kind of like their efforts had a fruit. So they were trying to inspire young minds to be interested in research. And I was only, I would say 15, 16 when I went to Amara Hassan Research Institute, when I was still in Ethiopia. But then in general, when it comes to barriers, I would say people living in the cities wouldn't have the same resources as people living in regional states or in rural areas. But then I would say one of the ways to be able to tackle them would be to reach out to each other, or to reach out to people that you already know. I would say the system itself can be a problem, but then you would have like being able to gather and have like voices, not just one, but many, would be able to break the kind of system that doesn't allow, especially girls, to participate in such kind of like opportunities when it comes to research. Thank you.
Thank you, Feven. Thank you so much for that. And Jeff, Feven, so I have another question which is somewhat related to the one I just asked. You come from a nation which is a developing nation, right? Ethiopia is a developing nation. It's in Africa, and Africa is somewhat of a very conservative place than the West, I believe. So, did you face any barrier coming from a very different social background, probably a more conservative one? Did you face any barrier because of your geographic location?
Okay, so like you mean in terms of like cultural,
yes,
kind of like having different cultures?
Yes, even like you came all the way from you went all the way from Africa to Central America to get an education. Was there any cultural shock, or like did you face any barrier coming from a developing nation? Did you face any barrier regarding that?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say that there would be cultural shocks. It is one of the most kind of like it's one of the most crucial things that would be able to transform you, I would say, because when I first went to UW Costa Rica, it wasn't like it was my first time traveling. It was my first time being away from home and being immersed in a very diverse like society. So at first, I was scared to voice my opinion, to be able to say, "Oh, I believe in this, I believe in that." So like I used to see myself as kind of shy and less confident person. But then I would say UWC Costa Rica is a place, or generally all UWCs are places that have people from all over the world, and it's probably that everyone else is going through the same thing as you are, and the problem is that you would think that you're the only one going through that, but then it wouldn't be only you; it would be like everyone else. And so like I do remember being. Like, for example, here in Ethiopia, it's very uncommon to, like, from dressing styles, for example. Like, it's very different. The way we dress is very different from, like, we don't have the liberty to dress in whatever way we want. So those are kind of things that you would see. But then through time, you would be like, okay, I have my values. And then as long as I respect others' values, your values would be respected as well. And I would say that the most important thing when you go to such a diverse community is that you would have a support. So your advisors would be supporting you. Your supervisor, Jeff, was very like supportive. You would have residential coordinators. You would have tutors. So you would have support so that you can stand and say, oh, I can, like, I have the confidence to say what I want. I have a voice. So you would kind of transform yourself.
Thank you, Fiven. Thank you so much. There's a question that I want to entertain. It's from Nafisa Islam. So she said, hello, everyone. Thank you, Global Network for Environmental Affairs, for organizing this event. I just want to know whether you all have faced any obstacles during your respective researches in terms of cooperating with people and technological limitations, and what were they? So Jeff, you first, and then followed by Stephen.
Obstacles. Yeah, sometimes the biggest obstacles are the ones we place on ourselves, right? Motivation, time, I think, is sometimes or that myth that we don't have enough time, or it's really how we structure our time that we do have. In terms of getting in and doing research, there are things about having the right permits, accessibility. Dilly just mentioned that right now with the pandemic that a lot of places are closed down, but because she had established some sort of residence, she's able to live in one of the most popular, most scenically beautiful national parks that there is in the United States. And so there are all those, funding is a big one. That's probably depending upon where you are in your career is funding. I remember doing my own graduate research. I wrote bunches of different proposals, and you get close, but you didn't get the funding. And of all things, that was the birth of Natural Solutions. I found it was much more beneficial to me to start an organization, an ecotourism organization, in which I can invest time and collect money, right, for providing these services for people, and then I could use that money to go back out and do more research. And so obstacles: funding, time, permits. These are some of the typical ones that you face.
Thank you, Jeff. And Steven, you also work as an intern at like institutions regarding tuberculosis research center. There was a research center you worked at in Ethiopia. Did you face any barrier regarding your research, or in that internship, or in any other places?
Yeah, I would say, like, instead of talking about like the obstacles that you face in terms of the research, I would say that when you are doing the research itself, you would find, like, for example, like you would have a question, and then when you're doing the research, you would realize that it's not a question that you can really answer. Mm-hmm. Or like you would have constraints in terms of sample size, or constraints in terms of like what you're capable of. For example, like I'm not a trained lab technician, so I may not be able to work with some tools because I don't have the the proper education beforehand, right? And then you would also, like, for example, you would collect all the samples and you would do the research, but then you would realize that at the end the data wouldn't be a valid data. I think those are the kind of things that you would face when you're doing the research itself. And in terms of obstacles, I think Jeff mentioned all of them, like time and funding. Also, like not being able to get, like, for example, I tried to look at internships in other research institutes before this one, and I was like, okay, I can't do the others, maybe because they're not doing the specific research that you want to do. Because mine was around lab tests, especially LPA. So you would find some research institutes, but they wouldn't have the tests that you want, if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Steven, it completely makes sense. And these are the barriers. Actually, many of us, of and many other young people would actually relate to. And this is very, it feels like we're not like left out when we see that there are also other people around the world who face
Hmm.
like same struggles, somewhat same struggles, regardless of the geographic location or maybe age or gender. This makes us feel more included. This makes us feel like we are part of like a movement, or we are part of a global society. So it is very inspiring, I believe, for the viewers and everyone around the world when people can relate to each other, even if it's a problem or anything else. So as we are way behind our schedule, so with that, I have to finish today's webinar. So I really want to show my heartfelt gratitude towards Jeff, Feevan, and Dilly. Dilly had to leave early for some issues. I am very thankful to each and every one of you for agreeing to join this webinar. So it was an honor to have you here, all three of you. And I personally know how busy Jeff is regarding his like work, his school, natural solutions, and then Dilly is very busy with her work, and she till yesterday she stayed in a very remote place, but only for the sake of this webinar she took a tour and then came to the urban part of the state, and she joined us. It's really like we are very grateful to Dilly. Feevan mentioned she is going to have some internet issues, but she said she will take care of it, and she did. Till she joined us, so it's really great to see three amazing people in the same platform having a very collaborative dialogue and a very and you were able to inspire our viewers. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much, Feevan. It means a lot to us that you made some time for us, and thanks to the audience for making this webinar very engaging. And I can promise you, on behalf of Global Network for Environmental Affairs, that this webinar will not be the last. We are going to have more webinars and more engaging sessions in the future. So Jeff and Steven, do you want to say something to the audience? Anything you want to address?
Yeah, I would end. Yeah, I would end by first of all thanking you for the opportunity, Ajmine and GNEA for putting this together, because it's really great to be able to reflect upon some of the reasons behind why we do what we do, and to the listeners, those that connected, and hopefully you find use from this. I would leave the sort of like the last sorts of things I would say is maintain hope. Okay, is that as long as we have hope, we can always move towards some of these conservation goals that we have. Be patient, right? Give yourself time. I know the International Climate Control Panel said something about we have 11 years now. It's not like we have lots of time, but there is still time in which we can make those necessary changes. And I think what's great about this is the humility that we need to have and the interconnectedness. You were talking to Feevan about the health issue, right? The human health, and Feevan was dealing with a respiratory disease, and now we're under a global pandemic facing a respiratory disease, which of all things is somehow related to a bat, right? And that's where Dilly is working, and it's just fascinating to see that the conservation is really just an interconnection of just about everything, right? How we use resources and how we live together as a society. And so recognizing the interconnectedness of life, maintaining hope, humility, and patience for the future, I think are key things for each one of you that want to become more involved with conservation. So I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you very much again for having us.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Feevan?
I would say thank you so much for inviting us. It was really nice to connect with Jeff and also with my fellow UWC Costa Rica alumni. And please let us know if you have more questions for people who are looking at the webinar. I'm sure Jeff would be more than happy to answer. I would be more than happy to answer. And also we can put you in touch with the people who are who can answer your questions, because we know so many students from UWC. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fiven, and thank you so much, Jeff. And with that, we are concluding our webinar. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So hoping to catch up with you guys soon.